Good evening, it's Arena. It's a beautiful day in San Antonio, Texas. So I reacted to um, SABATON, and it was the Lost Battalion. And so I got some good comments and was helping me in suggesting the Sabaton History channel. And so I've hit right now, subscribed. I'm going to like. I've been thinking about this song all day. And so the best thing I can do, educate myself. So we're going to go ahead and listen to this. It is 16 minutes and 40 seconds. So take a snack. But it's probably be a little bit longer with me talking. Talkity talk, talk, talk. Gemini. Let's go ahead. Here we go. Oh, shit. I forgot to charge my headphones, so we'll see how further I can get in here. Hopefully this whole time. Let's go.
I'm Indy Nidell.
And I'm Joachim from Sabaton, and this is Sabaton History.
And we are standing in the Argonne Forest where the Lost Battalion was lost during the First World War.
One moment. Let me go back a little bit. I need to pronounce the,
In the Argonne Forest.
Argonne Forest. That's what I was worried not pronouncing it properly early, so I didn't say it at all. Hopefully I got it. Argonne, kind of like Lord of the Rings, kind of like. Let's go.
Where the Lost Battalion was lost during the First World War.
So let's find out more, shall we?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
The Argonne is rough terrain, rocky hills and thick woodland, and it had been in German hands since the end of 1914. Now, in late September 1918, the Argonne was an important part of the strongest German position, the Hagenstellung. And as the Allies finally began to break through, it comes down to the Americans to push through that fortified maze of bushes and ravines. But the American forces had hardly any experience in this terrain, especially not the 77th Division. That division was mostly from New York, and they were former street kids, baseball players, thugs, gamblers, clerks, gangsters.
Those are my kind of people. No, I'm just playing. Let's go back a little bit.
Especially not the 77th Division. That division was mostly from New York.
And
they were former street kids, baseball players, thugs, gamblers, clerks, gangsters, shoemakers, bouncers, everything.
Wow, everything.
And many were recent immigrants, men with Irish, German, Polish, or Russian heritage, Catholics, Protestants, and Jews. They were the most mixed bunch you could imagine, and just before they were shipped out to France, in April 1918, they had been bolstered with men from the Midwest. They were truly an all-American division. The Meuse-Argonne offensive had been making progress, and despite heavy casualties, the Americans advanced several miles towards the Germans. By the end of September, the 77th Division stood deep in enemy territory. But progress was still way too slow for High Command's liking, and orders came to keep up the pace. As long as the official casualty list was still comparatively low, there was no need to stop. But for the men on the ground, this was easier said than done. Major Charles Whittlesey, in command of 9 companies of the 77th, complained to General Alexander, in overall command, that their flanks were constantly exposed, as the French forces on the left and the 308th Regiment on the right were not keeping up with them. That was indeed a major problem, because once inside the forest, it was easy to lose track of time and direction. Since they had no wireless radio, they had to rely on maps and compasses. Time and again, they had been surprised by hidden German machine gun posts, and German infiltration teams were constantly trying to outflank companies that went too far ahead. More than once, Whittlesey's companies had lost contact with the forces on their flanks, right?
Oh.
General Alexander gave the strict order they were to go forwards, not backwards. Major Whittlesey wholeheartedly disagreed with Alexander, and he knew the reality of frontline combat better, but there was no point in arguing. So early on the morning of October 2nd, Whittlesey...
Wow, okay, I'm probably not going to remember all of this, but I'm trying. I'm really trying to grasp this, but I do get it.
His battalion of roughly 550 men entered the
Wow.
forest, behind a creeping barrage where the German trenches were believed to be. As they marched forward, though, they noticed that the enemy was strangely silent. Here and there, terrified young boys and exhausted old men in dirty German uniforms came their way, surrendering without a fight. And hopes were high that Germany was finally coming to the end of its fighting capability, and breakthrough was close at hand. But once again, hidden machine guns and mortars opened up on them. Yet there was no continuous German line, just small nests of resistance. They pushed on until the evening and reached the top of a ravine where they suddenly stood at a major German strongpoint, but one without a single German soldier in sight. Maybe General Alexander had been right all along. Maybe the Germans were truly broken and in full retreat. Major Whittlesey ordered his men to move along, though he had not heard from the commanders on his flanks for quite a while. What he could not know was that the Germans were by no means broken. He had simply found a hole in their front line. The French and the 308 had made only little progress, and the only ones really pushing forward right now were Whittlesey's 9 companies, and the Germans were about to notice.
1918, the great war rages on. Our battalion is lost in the Argonne.
So they were talking about this documentary in the beginning is about World War One, something that I'm not as familiar with. I know a lot about World War Two. I'm not like an expert by any means. Just that my grandfather was overseas for I think 4 years without coming back home to America. Lots of stories. So that's pretty much all I know about that. So World War One, not as much. Plus, I wanted to let you know that this is important, and the Lost Battalion. I want people to know about this. These were brave men.
By nightfall, the battalion had dug in on the side of a hill, and they arranged their machine guns around the perimeter. Major Whittlesey was then told that the men had heard German voices back from where they came. As daylight found them, so too did the German mortars. Whittlesey had around 500 men fit for action and had still heard nothing from his flanks. He sent out runners, and they thought they spotted German soldiers moving through the bushes. Now, Whittlesey...
When I asked my husband about the message and how that worked, and he was talking about it, it must have been a runner. Some runners that were trying to do that.
Nothing from his flanks. He sent out runners, and they thought they spotted German soldiers moving through the bushes. Now, Whittlesey had seen that before, the German infiltration tactics. So he sent out his strongest company, E Company. But were they really Germans out there, or friendly runners trying to reestablish connection?
Sounds like a
voice
mess.
came from the bushes. Americans? It asked. A private replied, yes, E Company. The response to that was a hail of hand grenades and machine gun fire. E Company was no more. The Germans had found them, and Whittlesey's worst fears had come true. He was cut off, and not even his carrier pigeons seemed able to find their way. And the German artillery was getting closer. Whittlesey was in a tight spot. He could pull back and make a break for the American lines, but he had a lot of wounded, and going back would mean leaving them out in the open. He also had no idea how many Germans were there. He chose to stay. The Germans tested them, rushing from cover to cover, baiting the Americans to fire at them and reveal their positions. And German mortars caused heavy casualties. But the Americans had an advantage. They had German immigrants in their ranks who understood the carelessly shouted German commands. This foiled attacks until night fell. The pocket was shrinking, but still held. The water and food were running out fast. On the third day, water and food had run out, and the men resorted to searching German corpses for food. Whittlesey and the other officers did their best to keep up morale, and in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of France, the New Yorker attitude still came through. Every German attack was met with defiance, and every insult was promptly returned. The 77s would not be cowed and would not give up. In the afternoon, the shelling intensified and crept dangerously close. Then it finally hit their positions. Huge artillery shells rained down on them, and it became clear that it was American artillery. Whittlesey hurried to his birds. None had returned, and there was only one left, the handler's favorite, a black and white pigeon called Cher Ami. Whittlesey wrote, "Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." And his coordinates on a piece of paper, put it in an aluminum tube, and bound it to the bird's leg. All their hopes lay with this bird, and Cher Ami took off to the next tree, where she sat peacefully on a branch, watching the men who kicked the tree and threw stones at the bird until she took wing again. The shelling continued, and even got worse as the Germans joined in. Soon, German soldiers were breaking into the pocket, hurling grenades as they came down the slope. Now, had they intended to kill all of the Americans, they would probably have succeeded, but instead they tried to take prisoners. This gave the battalion a chance to fight back. Machine guns ran hot. Soldiers fired at point-blank range from a wall of corpses, resisting capture once more, forcing the Germans to retreat. And night fell once again.
Chose not to surrender. They chose victory or defeat.
I'm wondering if I need to, when I hear a song, to start, I'm sorry, I'm losing what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to focus on this, that I look up the history before I do a song. That's what I'm wondering. Maybe do with both and combine it. Yeah. I'm thinking about it.
They would probably have succeeded, but instead they tried to take prisoners. This gave the battalion a chance to fight back. Machine guns ran hot. Soldiers fired at point-blank range from a wall of corpses, resisting capture once more, forcing the Germans to retreat. And night fell once again.
Chose not to surrender. They chose victory or defeat. Fallen brothers resting by their feet.
Unknown to them, their story was getting attention. At first, politically, both American and German high commands knew that the destruction of the pocket would be a propaganda coup. The Germans could boast how superior their troops were, and the Americans would face political backlash back at home, and maybe even be taken out of the line. Both sides increased efforts to find them. As morning broke on the fourth day, Whittlesey and his men had no food, little ammo, and most of their machine guns were destroyed. The artillery barrage came back, but this time, it did not hit their position, instead falling on the Germans further north. Cher Ami had found its way to the American headquarters. With a shrapnel wound and a leg blown off, she had still given their coordinates to headquarters.
That's
so now,
insane.
American command...
I need to know. My husband knows a lot about the pigeons and things like that. That stuff is just, it blows my mind. Need to know a little bit more about it, I think.
And knew where they were, but still didn't know their situation. In fact, Alexander was writing out orders that Whittlesey should resume the attack northwards. The Germans made plans to finally destroy the pocket. The next night, several groups of veteran stormtroops appeared at the front, ready to move in, but this time they would not take prisoners. Day 5. At midday, came
5
panic
days,
shouts.
y'all.
Liquid fire sprayed the position, and a shower of grenades fell. German flamethrowers came down the slope, while from the flanks, stormtroops tore through the bushes. A violent melee began. Engulfed in smoke and flames, the pocket turned into a no-holds-barred brawl to the death. The Americans engaged the stormtroops with knives, clubs, and bayonets. Officers fired their revolvers at point-blank range. No quarter was given. No mercy was shown.
Let's go back a little bit. I apologize. Let's go. I don't need to apologize every single time, right? I have a tendency of doing that. I'm just trying to absorb as much as I can.
A violent melee began. Engulfed in smoke and flames, the pocket turned into a no-holds-barred brawl to the death. The Americans engaged the stormtroops with knives, clubs, and bayonets. Officers fired their revolvers at point-blank range. No quarter was given. No mercy was shown. And the Americans held. Barely. But they held. The 6th day of combat began. The men were exhausted, mentally and physically. The mood now was fatalistic, and many wrote their final letters, not expecting to come out of this alive. But the Germans sent in a letter of their own, asking for surrender. Whittlesey made clear there would be no surrender. High Command had sent out volunteers to establish contact. Many were intercepted by the Germans, but some eventually broke through and came in contact with the rest of the 77th Division, trying to fight its way through to the Lost Battalion. Finally, on the 8th of October, after 7 days of combat, the Lost Battalion was found.
They would never go fly, they would never die. Through the blockade, they were finally saved.
Food and water were rushed into the exhausted men.
Nice.
From the 554 men that went in, 197 were killed, and 150 were either missing or captured by the enemy. Only 194 men walked out of the pocket under their own steam, but most of them were wounded. Nearly overnight, it became the biggest American story of the war. War reporters rushed into the scene and immediately interviewed the men, which is why we have such a detailed account of the fighting. Major Charles Whittlesey and 2 other captains would receive the Medal of Honor for their actions, and Cher Ami was even awarded the Croix de Guerre. But all of the men had become heroes to the American public, and stories and books were written about them. They really became the all-American heroes of the war. And to this day, books, films, and songs are written about them and their stand as they have entered the realm of American legend.
Legends. Chills.
Okay, Lost Battalion, the song.
Okay, so that's the history. Now they're going to talk a little bit more about the song itself. Since I am, let me see, the gentleman that has been talking, I don't, if he just deals with the history, and then this gentleman on the left looks like a rocker. So let's go.
What do you got?
Nothing.
Now this is an interesting idea for a Sabaton song. How did you come up with the idea in the first place?
Well, you know, over the years we've asked our fans from all over the world to give us ideas, send us emails or give us books and such. And this one is actually one of those stories.
Okay.
Many years back, a friend named Mike gave us a book called The Lost Battalion, actually.
So you guys do actually go through, like when people send you books and things, you do actually read them. And
yes, I mean, not
sounds
everything, obviously. We get a lot of books, but everything that we think looks interesting and can be inspiration for a song. Over the years, I don't know how many thousands of emails we have got.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say we have read everyone, and they're all saved, except when you suggested Star Wars or such.
Okay, well, when they do their album Star Wars, we'll have to be on location for that, too.
Yes.
You can write in and ask if you want us on the ice planet Hoth or on the desert planet Tatooine when we film the Star Wars one, because those will be fun to do.
Yeah, but it'll be far, far away.
But we know there's a cantina where we can get drinks.
Oh, yes, that's good.
Before I forget, I'll tell you what. In the description, there'll be a link to that book so that anybody, because you said it was good, yeah?
Very good.
And it inspired the song.
Yes.
Now, what about the song itself? Is it just a traditional, straightforward Sabaton?
No, this is very different. This one actually has a new drum kit that isn't real. I had this idea, and I had it for many, many years, but it was never turned into a reality until now.
Okay.
And the kick drum is a machine gun.
Okay.
The snare drum is a 9mm handgun.
Yeah.
And this is kind of macabre, but the hi-hat is a bayonet going into flesh.
Let's go back on that, because that's pretty interesting. Let's go.
Inspired the song.
Yes.
Now, what about the song itself? Is it just a traditional, straightforward Sabaton?
No, this is very different. This one actually has a new drum kit that isn't real. I had this idea, and I had it for many, many years. But
one moment, I don't know what a straightforward 7.
Oh, yes,
I think that's
good.
what he says.
Before I forget, I'll tell you what. In the description, there'll be a link to that book so that anybody, because you said it was good, yeah?
Very good.
And it inspired the song.
Yes.
Now, what about the song itself? Is it just a traditional, straightforward
Traditional,
Sabaton?
No, this is very different.
7. I don't know
this
what
one
that
actually
means.
has a new drum kit that isn't real. I had this idea, and I had it for many, many years, but it was never turned into a reality until now.
Okay.
And The kick drum
Yeah.
is a machine gun.
Okay.
The snare drum is a 9mm handgun.
Yeah.
And this is kind of macabre, but the hi-hat is a bayonet going into flesh.
Can we hear some of that right now?
Sorry.
All right, there we are. Yeah, I love that when that happens.
Yes.
That
I
was
can also
cool.
call down thunder. Never mind.
No, but it's really this idea I had for a long time, and sound production wise it's a nightmare, you know.
Yeah.
So I basically took the sounds of these machine guns, 9mm guns and everything, and I tested everything.
Yeah.
And I built, obviously this is computer based samples, but I built a drum kit out of, well, sounds of death, I guess.
But that, I guess, will
Sounds
bring
of
home
death.
what these guys were actually facing. I mean, they're there for days. They're under fire, not just from the Germans, under fire from their own guys.
Yeah, and it's from that point of view, it's really one of my favorite things, because finally a crazy idea I had actually worked out.
Now, I can't help but ask, how are you going to do that live?
We have done it live a couple of times, actually.
With
I'd like
stabbing someone in the
to.
bayonets repeatedly?
Yeah,
to get the
yeah, yeah.
hi-hat
Actually,
noise?
yeah. His problem is miking them up, you know.
Oh, yeah. Because they go, ow, 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 ow.
I definitely want to hear that song live for sure.
Yes,
Just the bayonet noise. That's
Yes.
all we want.
you need to be quiet. No, but we actually for that, Hannes is playing it live, but
Hans.
it's triggered by samples.
Okay.
So
it's
he's
like that.
yeah, we have triggers on the drums. So when he's punching everything, it's still the sample drums we hear. We mix them with acoustic drums, so it's a mix there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's played live because we don't want to put it on a drum machine when we have an awesome drummer, you know.
Well, that's absolutely true.
Makes sense. I'll try to find that.
The great war rages on. A battalion is lost in the
All right, everybody. That was Lost Battalion from The Last Stand, which came out a couple of years ago. And if you don't know that one, you should definitely get that one. And you should also get the new one, The
You
Great
better
War,
ask
since we're here
somebody.
filming on locations from The Great War.
Yeah, that's it for today.
See you soon.
Okay. Well, I did it, so I'm very happy about that. Because it was bothering me. I was like, I need to know. I want to know all that. Now that I know what war it was from, because I was kind of confused, even with the year. I did not do well with history when it comes to specifically battles, war, things like that. It bored me to tears when I was young. But I'm 42 now, and I want to learn as much as I can. Thank you for taking that time. Have a blessed day. Bye, y'all. Sorry, I'm back. I wanted to... I have to wear glasses. I don't know, maybe I need to get different glasses. They have like a protection, so glare. I'm not sure. Please let me know with that, because that is annoying, and I worry about the glare to you all, and that was bad. I also wanted to say, please subscribe. I'm horrible with putting that in there. And likes are welcomed. Also, check out the descriptions. Usually I leave little things on there. Have a blessed day.